This is day 6 of the September 94 7-day retreat in Springwater. A few days ago, someone said to me, "You talk so much about listening. Listen, let's listen." With this emphasis on listening, aren't you cutting out that population of human beings who can't hear or deaf? Before using the word listening, I used more often the word seeing. I still use that. And then I was asked, aren't you cutting out the blind? So how are we going to talk with each other? In saying listening or seeing or experiencing or tasting, it's not just a reference to one single sense. That word listening or seeing includes all senses as one whole, undivided whole. And all senses come together in one undivided whole when there is awareness. Awareness undented by constant self-reference, which is not being judged or condemned in saying this. But it is a fact observable and has been observed by probably everyone here, that as long as there is self-reference, fear of what could happen to me, or wanting something to happen to me, in this thought-created network of time, there is no pure awareness possible. Then the ears go out to hear something, the eyes go out to grasp something visually, connected with thinking about me and my past and future and my experiences in the present. There was a neat saying I remember from the Zen tradition, which is, see with your ears and hear with your eyes. Because we all know the expression of hearing with the inner ear. And not referring solely to sounds. Seeing not referring solely to sights. That's why I said earlier, the senses are alert and open as a whole when there is a moment of awareness, in which no object is needed or separated out as an object of sight, object of hearing. Awareness needs no objects, it just sheds light on what is. And that awareness is not solely sensuous or sensual. It's not separate from the senses and yet also transcends the senses. Got to be very careful with words. And yet there are no perfect words. Maybe fortunately, else we may be forever stuck in them. I jotted down 4 different things said during the last, I think, 24 hours, which have remained with me and maybe can weave themselves together in this talk. One is that person saying after waking up, coming to from all kinds of stimulating fantasies which keep the body in a state of stimulation, excitement. Waking up to that and that quieting down, not going with the fantasies. There seems to be a period of, and she couldn't find the right word, we agreed in the group of blahs would be the best word. Time of feeling bored, blah, not maybe like in a state of withdrawal. And the way this person put it, it seems to be a transition between stimulation through fantasy and ideas and imagination and just being here in the richness of being sensitive to what is happening inside and out, in between this period of the blahs. And very easy in this period of feeling unstimulated, bored, nothing happening, to keep fantasizing, fantasies to come up to relieve that state of discomfort. Someone else said, I don't really know to this day whether just sitting is enough for me. I recently heard a talk at the Zen Center where the importance of koans was stressed. And off and on during this retreat, I've been wondering whether this is what I should be doing with my sitting, work on a koan. And then saying, I really don't know what to do. Someone else saying, I feel I've been tying myself into straitjacket upon straitjacket by thinking that I ought to be attentive and constantly checking in on myself whether I am attentive or not. Can you say something about that? And then just this morning, someone saying, a few days ago, I don't know in what context, you were mentioning someone telling you, walking through the meadow, and that walk seemed like an eternity. Flowers were like jewels glistening, and so forth and so forth. Aren't you, by talking about this or mentioning this, setting up a subtle thing again of wonderful things to happen? Wonderful things to come out of this sitting. Person, this was reminiscent of Enlightenment stories. was used. Setting up something in the mind. A come on. Which we can go right on, could be used during a period of loss to think about that story of someone walking through the meadow without a sense of time, seeing ants and grass blades and flowers in a new light. Actually, I mentioned it too in this morning, in this friendly conversation. In mentioning this, it occurred to me that there may be criticism as I was saying it. Criticism of this establishing of a goal, of a bright future, of something to attain, something to work for and toward. And the question comes up right now is, the airplane is humming and cicadas are chirping again in the sunlight. Why is it so extraordinarily difficult, or seems so extraordinarily difficult, just being this simple moment, one at a time? No matter what the moment feels like, or looks like, or sounds like, or tastes like, blah or exciting, zesty or boring, rich or poor, full or empty. Why is it so difficult? Just being this moment. No matter what. And not the idea of being this moment. It may also sound inviting again, a nice concept to strive for. I'll do a lot of sitting so I can eventually be this moment. Words are tricky. And maybe there shouldn't be any talks. Sometimes people say that to me. Why do you give talks? The talks are being held. They pour forth. And may, as was also mentioned, start moving something. Set in motion what has felt so stuck. Pain or pleasure, thought about it. Thought about what one is. Ideas about what one should be. Setting in motion the questioning, what is all of that? Is that what I am? All the thoughts, all the memories, all the goals I've had. As to the question about koan study, I see our moment-to-moment living as this non-negotiable koan, which we're constantly trying to solve by trying to figure it out What will be the right way of living, the right way of sitting, the right way of practicing, the right way of advancing? But, and I mean this, non-defensively, anyone is free to experiment with koans. They are offered in many centers throughout the country. One very close by. More interested in the desire for working with a koan was this statement that followed: I really don't know what to do. And the question came up immediately, is that really so? Is that really the truth? I don't know what to do. I've tried everything. Tried to be aware, tried to do koans, tried to do mantras, tried to follow the breathing. Try to just be attentive. And all of this trying doesn't seem to help or work. I don't know what to do. Is one really there, here, with not knowing what to do? Or is this just an exclamation implying there must be something I can find out to do? Someone can let me know what to do. And so we go from one place to another. From one teacher to another, from one tradition to another, one country to another, in search of someone telling me what to do, so I can know what to do. And until we really come to this place of not knowing what to do, maybe we need to travel. It's happening all over the world. But what does it mean, not knowing what to do? Does it mean the trying mind giving up, slowing down, giving up? Not knowing means not knowing. Knowing meaning that light of knowledge, which is our refuge, has become our refuge through our upbringing, education, reading, teaching, to know something. We're talking about that in a group. Why does knowing something practical at work, in the office, so quickly become self-enhancement, knowing more than others, or feeling jealous of others who know more than me, envious? It's because knowing has been our refuge, our badge. We were graded for what we knew in school. Inviting instant comparisons, who is the best, who is the worst? Am I getting better? Am I knowing more? And the reward through attention from the teacher, from parents. Sometimes hatred from one's co-students I've heard frequently recently that in certain segments of this multiracial society, it becomes very unpopular to be a knowing one, a good student, to have good grades. It's of more value to be accepted and part of the group than to stick out through knowledge. But mostly in our society, and those like us, which are most in this world, maybe I'm wrong here, knowledge is an attribute of value, of pride, of admiration, and of security. Well, we said refuge. There's a strange feeling of habitual security if I know something, if I have a word for it, an explanation for it, a proper description of it. That's something marvelous to observe as we communicate with each other socially. How important it is, what a pressure, an internal pressure there is to be in the know, to keep up with others, to be, at least to think that one is esteemed by others through what one knows. And a growing, ever-growing attachment to that. This is one's identity now, being in the know, having knowledge to offer at most occasions, or knowing where to get it if it doesn't come out of these personal files. Why do we feel secure in knowing? It's something to question, and maybe even leave the question open, not answer it all. Reasons have already been listed. To watch it and question it. Maybe all of us have been scolded, the recipients of anger for being dumb and stupid. It's an amazing fact that anger is aroused when someone is stupid, doesn't get it, becomes the target of recrimination, maybe ridicule or despise. And we have been that target ourselves, one time or another. And may savor that security of knowing, so we will not be humiliated, will not be second to someone else, or third or fourth. So not knowing is something very dangerous for our well-being, in that pseudo-security, isn't it? It doesn't make any sense in our practical society not to know, and I'm not advocating to get a computer job and not know about computers. So can there be a dropping of fear or threat about a state of not knowing? One is questioning it. One is questioning what is knowing and what is not knowing. Not knowing what to do. I've tried everything. I don't know whether my sitting is getting any better. Is it getting any better? People ask me. Not everyone, please. Not to generalize. Sometimes people who hear tapes generalize on retreats by the questions that are asked. And yet, if we're honest, maybe they are not so personal after all. Maybe they are very general questions. We may just be less forward and open in revealing what moves us or fails to move us. Not knowing is not knowing. Which means here, now, with what's happening before I know it. Knowing happens so quickly. It doesn't have to. It can quiet down and be in abeyance, but it can happen very quickly. The word comes up, the explanation. And yet, the word and the explanation is not what was. It's just what's coming up after the fact of being here without knowing. Being a whole question mark, as it were. All of oneself being a question mark. And in touch with the scariness that may elicit physically, heart palpitating, stomach, intestines, breathing, blood rushing. Either at the idea of not knowing, or really not knowing what something is, but in touch with it, seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting it, aware of it. Before the next thought arises. And if that awareness is really there, the next thought arising is just one more thing that is happening right now. And if that thought that arises triggers the faster heartbeat or the pangs in the solar plexus, whichever way it's experienced, pressure on the chest, that's one more thing arising this instant of airplaning. Airplane is the word. We're talking with each other. I can't just say, Oh, well, that may be a new talk. But at the moment of saying the word airplaning, was that sound there? Maybe a picture of an airplane too. That's what's arising. And the sound, and people laughing and moving, gesticulating arms and hands. You say you're knowing it. No, it's just a description coming up. But the sounds, before they are described, are not known. They're there. And one is not separate from it if there's not this instant taking refuge in the knowing. And that needs to be questioned and observed. Our deep security attachment to this lifesaver of knowing, seemingly lifesaver. To maybe sometime be in a conversation, experimenting with it. Something comes up and the urge to pour forth with one's knowledge is felt and withheld because there's awareness. And with the impulse to pour forth the knowledge, speak about it, seems to give up its energy to awareness. If it's seen. It's an interesting observation we can all make. not going with an impulse, not suppressing it with principle. I shouldn't do this is bad. But seeing the impulse and not going with it. There's energy released. And that energy is being here, seeing, hearing, aware, alert. Now it's a very tricky ground, this not knowing, because I was just visualizing a group meeting and someone saying something. I want to understand what the person is saying. And of course this needs the faculty of language, memory, word meaning. And if that meaning isn't clear, I will say, can you say some more? I want to hear more. I don't quite understand it. But what's primarily there is the listening. Not already jumping to a conclusion at the first two words, which is why we misunderstand each other so much. And the jumping in is a conditioned reflex from our school days. We went through this. Needing that security, that admiration, that identity of being the knower, which is a program running. So, how is it not to know what to do? And this may take in this other comment. Been tying myself into knots, trying to be attentive. And constantly checking in, am I attentive now? And the person realized that this was not attention. And yet, there must have been attention, or else there would not be such an accurate description of something happening with this body-mind. The trying, the checking in, and feeling tied in straitjacket, he said, a punch straitjacket. Our compulsive nature, I must do this right. Am I doing it right? We know that check in, don't we? Am I doing this right? Am I sitting right? Am I attentive? Am I listening properly? And many years ago, I was still sitting at the Zen Center. I remember this. It was a really striking discovery that in sitting quietly, I wasn't working on a koan. I used every free minute that I had between koans not to work on them. But to have that freedom to just sit, not knowing. And noticing that every once in a while, almost like a little set alarm, there came this question, how am I doing? Am I all right? How is it going? The brain, as it were, checking in on this organism. It could be just a checking in, are you all right? But also evaluatively, is this good stuff I'm doing? But it seemed to be a real automatism to remain in the know, even though there were periods of not knowing, just being there with the mind not grasping and groping, and then comes this, are you all right? Is it going okay for you? Are you getting any place? And with this discovery of this mechanism came a realization that it was not needed, that it was all right under the circumstances not to know and not to check in on oneself. It was all right, I'm saying now, in retrospect, to take that risk. I don't know if it was felt as a risk. But it was a relief to realize it was not necessary to check in on oneself. Not to know. And I'm saying that now, at the time that formulation didn't come. Really being there, being here, with nothing, as nothing. As nobody of importance or unimportance, of achievement or failure, good or bad. And that state is wide open, it's unlimited. It slips out of the personal. Includes everyone and everything, which is also nothing. And at this moment, that last question, I didn't write it down, but it has come up several times. It's a good time. At 11:16 on day 6. To briefly mention this fear of dying, which sits so deeply programmed in this body-mind, because there is such deep identity with this body-mind, attachment to it. Through all the knowledge of my past, we went into it in quite detail yesterday. My past, my future, the love of my story. And with that attachment, the inevitable hope that it will continue, if not until I'm 100, and at least in future lives. Of course, better future lives. Who wants worse future lives? Although right now, the way the future looks, if we think a bit, I think, well, let's not go into that. It's interesting that in this retreat, 3 people mentioned to me the Prajna Paramita, which is a chant, a Buddhist chant, chanted at Buddhist centers. And I must admit, I also remembered it. In this retreat, it came to mind. I don't know in what connection or context. Whether it was after someone mentioned it, I can't remember anymore. Actually, somebody asked me, could you give a talk maybe on the Prajna Paramita? It is about everything being empty. Form is only emptiness. Emptiness is only form. Form, this is form. It's empty. I've gotten away from chanting and reading and commenting on reading because it is a tricky thing. The mind then goes into the reading and thinking and remembering mode and does less looking directly. Because everything that's said in that chant is here manifesting and to be seen and read and heard and listened to and awakened to right now. One person yesterday mentioned the last 4 lines, is it, or 2? I don't know. They are usually chanted in Sanskrit, but the translation into English is, gone, gone. No, I don't remember. To the other shore, gone. Gone completely. Rejoice. So we love this chant, gone, gone to the other shore, completely rejoice, but yet we want another life. To continue. We want to hear about emptiness to relieve our present pain. Is that it? I'm not putting down the people who mention it. It occurred to me too. I'm just commenting on myself. There's pain, there's discomfort, and we want that to dissolve in emptiness, permeated with awareness, clarity, crickets chirping. But we also want that good feeling to continue forever and ever. That's how the many hymns ended that I used to sing in a church, forever and forever, forever and forever, forever and forever. That's all we want. Anything but being here, which we don't know. And being here, as maybe it was described in that discovery many years ago, means dying to the check-in service. How I am, how I will be or was. It's not needed. This moment is entirely free, unbound. Needs to go nowhere because there is nowhere to go. The other shore is this shore. And this shore is empty. And yet full of everything, without division. Have I painted a picture again? The mind builds it up so quickly. That's what I mentioned to the person this morning who brought it up. It was good he brought it up, so I could bring it up here. Maybe this was said, this thing about the walk through the meadow, to say, don't be afraid. Is that all right to say that? Fear not. We want to say something, but we can also be quiet. We will end here for today.